All right, should be going live now. What's going on, guys? Here to talk about some Monday Night Football. Let me tweet out that we're live, and then we can jump into it. Still messing with my green screen in the background. It seems like when it gets dark out, it does get a little bit blurry, so I'll continue to mess with that. But yeah, for now, just going to have myself in the top left corner. All right, so if you guys are new to the live stream, new to the channel, how it works is we'll take a look at the Vegas odds. We'll take a look at the snap counts here for each team in the most recent game, and then we'll give you guys a player-by-player breakdown, and then go to questions at the end. So let's start with the Vegas odds here. Currently at a 50 over-under, so that went up a little bit, right? It was 49 last night. But yeah, 50 over-under. Seahawks are currently 6.5-point favorites. If you guys missed the video last night, again, we'll take a look at the snap counts here. So for Seattle, Chris Carson was out last game. It was Carlos Hyde that was kind of the bell cow back. We have Carson back now, and looks like he's full go. So what I expect here is probably a good amount of work there for Carson, with Hyde mixed in a bit. So definitely Carson, I do prefer to Hyde. Dallas, maybe gets a snap here and there, but nothing really to feel confident about. As far as wide receivers, we know Metcalf, we know Lockett. They will be out there majority of the game. Both David Moore and Freddie Swain's status were up in the air. They're both available. So Moore should be the number 3. I expect about half the game from him. Freddie Swain will be the number 4. 20 to 30% is kind of what I'm expecting as far as the snaps for him. Tight ends, well, we do have to talk about the Greg Olsen injury, right? He went down late in that game. So Disley played 65% of snaps, and Hollister played 20%. What I expect here is I expect Disley to play more, but I expect him to be more used as a blocker. Hollister probably plays less, but I think will be more their pass-catching tight ends. So, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second once we get to the player-by-player breakdown. For running backs for Seattle, or for Philly, I should say, Miles Sanders played 60% of snaps last game. Boston Scott played 40%. I think Boston Scott does look like a pretty nice value on the slate. He's at 1K. He's shown he's a decent pass-catching running back. So, yeah, we have some value here, right, with the Seattle tight ends, with Boston Scott. Yeah, I expect probably about a 70-30 split with Sanders and Scott, but definitely does make Scott a viable punt. Wide receivers for Philly, well, Fulgham and Jalen Reagor basically played the entire game last game. I like both a lot, their respective prices. Greg Ward, the number 3, played 68% of snaps, with Alshon only playing 7%. The snaps went down in him after they said they were going to go up, so hard to feel super confident about Alshon tonight. And then tight ends, we still have no Zach Ertz, so I expect basically the entire game from Dallas Goedert. We saw the entire game, 100% of the snaps last game. With Richard Rodgers worked in a bit, he played 32% of the snaps that most recent game. All right, so let's start at the top here, right? Russell Wilson's at 12.6. He's going to be probably the most popular play in the slate for good reason. Sure, 12.6, you're not getting him at a discount, but Russell Wilson's been, like I said, a top 5 quarterback this year. He has rushing upside. He's just a really, really safe play. Now, is there a scenario where he's not in the winning lineup? I think it's a really, really small chance. And what you would probably need is kind of an ugly game, or for just the production to be really, kind of condensed on a couple guys. So with Russell Wilson, you definitely play him in cash games, and even in GPPs. I know the ownership's going to be way up, but I'm looking to get him in there. Sure, you can make the argument, again, to fade him. Maybe you can play both as wide receivers, but yeah, Wilson definitely one of the top plays of the slate. Definitely the safest play of the slate. And then we have Carson Wentz at 10-4. So looking like he is going to be pretty low owned tonight. And the reason why, well, they expect Jalen Hurts to get some snaps at quarterback. But we've seen this so many times throughout this year. You cannot trust coach speak, right? We saw with Aaron Jones in a showdown slate a few weeks ago. They're going to limit him, blah, blah, blah. He played more than he usually did. We saw it with Eckler this week, right? There was worry. Eckler is going to be limited, maybe 12 to 15 touches, and he played his full workload of snaps. So now we're getting the news, Jalen Hurts is going to be mixed in a bit. Sure, maybe he does play a few snaps, but it's sounding like everyone across the industry is scared of Carson Wentz. I'm fine to play him. I love the matchup here. I know he's really struggled. but it's just going to lower the ownership. And just on these showdown sites, you got to take a stand somewhere. It sounds like Wentz is going to be pretty low owned. I'm planting the flag. I'm hoping for a bounce back here for this Eagles passing attack, and I really like him. So, I expect him to be pretty low owned. If you're in the camp of you're scared of Jalen Hurts playing a lot, or that you feel Seattle just dominates this game, then you don't have to play Wentz. You don't have to. I'm just telling you where I'm going. I like him at low ownership. So that's kind of my thoughts with both quarterbacks. Obviously, Russell Wilson is going to be way more popular. There's definitely risk involved with Wentz. Bad quarterback play recently. He's been turning the ball over. Hurts probably gets a few snaps here and there. But I like him as a play that I think will be pretty low owned tonight. With the Seattle wide receivers, Metcalf and Lockett, I expect Lockett to be a little bit more popular at 9.6 compared to Metcalf at 11.4. Normally they're priced about the same way, so we have a 2K difference. Lockett should be a little bit more popular. I like both a good amount. It's just a little bit tricky to kind of nail down which one's going to be. Both have been up and down, right? Both have had ceiling games like 40 to 50 fancy points. So, like these guys both a lot. If you're going for like GPP winning upside to play one of them in the captain, I think you can play both, right? If you want to go the full Seattle stack and play Russell with both his pass catchers, that's a viable approach. Then go value from there. But yeah, if you're going to make me pick, I'll take the discount of Lockett. I do think he'll be a little bit more popular. So if you're taking ownership in consideration, maybe you go Metcalf. But both the top targets there for Seattle look pretty good, and both have shown this year they have huge upside. It's just both have been a little bit up and down. So we talked about both quarterbacks. We talked about both the Seattle receivers. Yeah, Sanders is at 9.2. I think he goes overlooked in the slate. I expect about 70% of the snaps for him, 15 and 16 carries in back-to-back games, 5 targets in each of those games as well. So he's shown he's a decent pass-catching running back. I think he does go overlooked on the slate. I think he will be pretty low owned due to the price and the fact that people just don't really want to play the Philadelphia guys. But I think Sanders makes for an interesting contrarian play. Definitely not a cash play, and not someone I would probably jam in if I'm making one lineup in tournaments, but I think the ownership will be pretty low, and he's a talented back, right? He's breaking some big runs this year. Now, Chris Carson at 8.8, I think does go a little bit overlooked as well. I think both running backs go lower owned in the slate. Carson hasn't played since week 7, but Seattle showed last game, right? They wanted to establish a run, right? They gave Hyde a good amount of work. They said Carson's a full go. So I think Carson does look like a pretty nice play here. He's, the games he's played, he's been targeted a good amount. So yeah, I have interest in Chris Carson. I think makes for a nice pivot off of chalky, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Right? I think that's going to be the popular build is to play Russell Wilson with one of his receivers. So I think Carson just goes a little bit lower owned. But I like his upside here. I expect full workload, probably 15 or so carries with a few targets as well. So yeah, Carson definitely in play here. And again, if you don't trust Philadelphia, if you think this game gets out of hand, then the running backs look even better here for the Seahawks, especially Carson, right? Hyde's at 7K. I just don't think it's worth it when I expect Carson to get a majority of the touches. I would say about 70-30 split would be my best guess. So yeah, Hyde looked good in that last game, but I expect Carson to get a majority of the work there at 8.8. I would just rather play him for the extra couple thousand. Now with Jalen Hurts, and they expect him to get some snaps here and there. It's just not for me at 7.2. If I'm going to play quarterback, I'll just play Wentz. So it's just too expensive, 7.2K. If he was like 2K, then I think you can make the argument for him, right? He'll probably get a few snaps here and there. He's shown he's a good runner. But yeah, at 7.2, it's just not for me. And then we get to the Philadelphia pass catchers, and I like all three a lot. I guess this is, again, kind of where I'm taking a stand in the slate. I like Wentz. I like the pass catchers here with Fulgham, Goddard, and Jalen Reagor. I like all three a lot. Fulgham and Reagor are going to play basically the entire game. Fulgham has shown he's been a really good wide receiver. He's flashed some upside. Sure, last couple games only one catch, but he's still playing majority of the game. He's still getting targets, and again, the talent is there. Same with Jalen Reagor. Jalen Reagor has yet to have like a breakout game. Maybe this is the game where he finally breaks out. But the snaps have slowly been going up for him. Still getting a good amount of targets. Again, I like the matchup here. So I really like Reagor. I really like Fulgham. I really like Goddard. No Zach Ertz. He played the entire game last game. Still getting a good amount of targets. Like I said, this should be good game script. Philadelphia probably is playing from behind this one. So I like all the Philadelphia pass catchers here, or those three guys with Fulgham, Goddard, and Jalen Reagor. I like all three quite a bit in the mid-range. Greg Ward's at 5.2. Definitely still in play. I just prefer Reagor and Fulgham for a little bit more due to the fact that I think they have a little bit more upside and the fact that they will probably play a little bit more, right, based off that last game. Greg Ward was clearly the number 3 guy. playing 68% of the snaps, while Rieger and Fulgham played over 90%. So yeah, I'm not saying Ward's out of play, but I would rather get to the other guys above him. David Moore's at 4.6. Well, what you know, David Moore is he's the number 3 receiver for the Seahawks. Doesn't have a ton of upside, but he should play about half the game. I think he's in play, right? He's had some games with over double-digit fantasy points, right? 4 games so far this year, 13, 18, 13, and 17. Obviously doesn't have the upside as Lockett and DK Metcalf, but I think he's fine for value if you want to go there. And then with the kickers with Myers and Elliott, I would probably feel a little bit more comfortable with Myers at 4.2 to Elliott at 4K, just because, again, I'm just a little bit feel more comfortable with Seattle's offense. Kickers have shown, right, they have upside. They can get you 15 or so fancy points. As far as the defenses go, well, again, if you're taking a stand that you think Philly struggles once again here, then you could just go the full Seattle stack, right? I kind of mentioned that in the video, right? You can do something like Russell Wilson, the captain, pair him with one of wide receivers, go Chris Carson, and then go, Seahawks defense, right? If that's the approach you want to go with, I don't think it's the worst idea, because if Seattle dominates this game, like this lineup definitely has upside here. So maybe you go like those 4 and then run it back with like one pass catcher from Philly. That's definitely a viable approach to go with on the slate. But yeah, back to other options here, kind of for cheaper guys. So talk about the Seahawks defense. As far as the Eagles go at 2.8, I'm not really looking to either defense for my single entry. Right, I only play one entry. If you're making a lot of lineups, I think you can throw both defensives in the player pool. Obviously, I would feel a little bit more comfortable with the Seahawks just to the fact of Wentz has been a turnover machine recently. Disley's at 3.6. I think he's a fine option here. He should play a good amount of the game, but I think he's going to be more used for a blocker. I personally like the price point a little bit better on Hollister at 1.4, but I think Hollister probably will be a little bit more popular. So again, this is a situation that if you want to go Disley, I think that's a fine option, but I think he will play more, but I think he'll be used more as a blocker here. Richard Rodgers is at 1.8K. I think he goes overlooked in the slate. What I expect from him is about 30-ish% of the snaps, where we just saw over 30% that last game. He's been targeted a decent amount. I think he's in play here, definitely for value. I think he does go a little bit overlooked with guys like Hollister, guys like Boston Scott. I think these guys look like pretty good value. And Hollister, I prefer him to Disley for the discount. I think he's the better pass-catching tight end. I don't think he'll play as much, but at 1.4K, definitely someone I'm looking to. I also really like Boston Scott at 1K. I expect probably 30% or so of the snaps at running back to go to Boston Scott. And at this price point, you don't need a ton. He's shown, right, he's a decent, he can catch the balls, catch some footballs. I don't know why I can't talk. But yeah, Boston Scott is a guy that I think you can definitely look to for value. So there is a decent amount of viable value plays on this slate. Below that, like Dallas will probably be the number 3 guy, but I'm not really looking to him. Let's see. Parkinson for Seattle, they said he will be used maybe a bit here. We'll have a role in offense moving forward. No Greg Olsen. We haven't really seen him yet this year. If you want to take a dart throw and maybe hope he gets enough snaps to make him viable, sure. But again, that's nothing you can really feel confident with. Freddie Swain at $200 is active. Again, would have looked a lot better if David Moore was out. With David Moore in, what I expect from Freddie Swain, he's the number 4 wide receiver. Probably 20 to 30% of the snaps, dependent on how the game goes. If the Seahawks fall behind, you could see maybe hit that upside, maybe 30% of the snaps. If they're playing from ahead, I expect maybe 20%. So, yeah, at $200, he was held without a catch last game. The previous game before that, though, 3 catches and 4 targets. So, yeah, $200, you can throw him in the player pool. But with David Moore playing, does make him a lot riskier. And that's kind of it for the player-by-player breakdown. So, again, let's talk about cash games here. And a captain, for cash games, I think you probably just play Russell Wilson, the captain. You probably go Russell Wilson and, one of his top receivers, whether it be Lockett or DK Metcalf. And then, Wentz, I guess, is the tricky one. If you are not confident with Wentz and you think, Hurts will play a decent amount, then I don't think you have to play Wentz. I'd probably still go there in cash. But it does make him riskier. So, yeah, it would probably be Wilson with one of his pass catchers, whether it be Lockett or Metcalf. I think I like the price a little bit better on Lockett. And then you can go a couple different ways, I guess, for cash. So I'll probably go these 2, or Wilson and one of his main pass catchers. And then you could go the Seattle stack approach. So go like Carson and then value from there. Or you go with Wentz, that's probably how I would go about it. If you're not confident with Wentz, I think this is probably a good way to build a cash game lineup. For GPPs, again, we know about 75% of the time the winning lineup has either a running back or wide receiver in the captains. So there's a lot of guys I think you can look to on the slate for captain. Obviously, Lockett and Metcalf probably look the best at captain just because both of them have shown immense upside so far. So definitely considering Lockett, definitely considering Metcalf. They're going to be popular, but both have shown huge upside in the captain. As far as the quarterbacks, sure, I think you can give a look to Russell Wilson or even Wentz at captain. Russell Wilson is going to be a lot more popular. He has rushing upside. So, yeah, I think you can go Russell in the captain as well. As far as Wentz goes, he's more of a contrarian captain, but definitely viable. And then, the running backs, again, I think both running backs go overlooked on the slate. So, with Carson, I think you can feel a little bit more comfortable with him just because, playing on the better team right now. But Sanders, more of a contrarian captain. And then, the guys in the mid-range with Fulgham, Goddard, and Rieger, I like all three quite a bit. Again, that's kind of my stand I'm taking on the showdown slate. I'm hoping for the bounce back here for this Eagles passing attack. Would I play any value guys in the captain? Probably not. I don't think you have to do it on this slate. There's definitely viable value plays, but I don't think I would take a shot on any of them in the captain, right? You have Hollister, you have Boston Scott, you have David Moore, you have Richard Rodgers, you have Disley. I don't think we have to go there in the captain, though. So, yeah, guys I'm really considering for the captain for GPPs, Rieger, Fulgham, Goddard, to be a little bit contrarian. Right? I like those guys a good amount in the mid-range. If you're going for a safer build, I guess, with upside, it's probably Metcalf or Lockett. I think you can consider Wilson as well for the captain. And the running backs, again, I think they go a little bit overlooked. So that's kind of what I got for you guys for my breakdown. We have under 15 minutes until lock, so now let's get to some questions. Real quick, I'll ask if you enjoy the content, guys, to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And closing in at 6K, so really appreciate it, guys, if you can leave a like button. Let's aim for 50 likes on this live stream. All right, let's get to some questions here. Fulgham or Goddard? So that's a tough one. Again, I told you guys I really like all those Eagles pass catchers in the mid-range. I think Fulgham probably has a little bit more upside. So if you're going for the upside, maybe Fulgham. No way I take Hurts. Yeah, Hurts is too expensive for me. If he was, again, 1 to 2K, I think you can make the argument there. Hollister or Richard Rodgers? That's a tough question. Both are pretty similar plays. I expect probably Hollister will pick up some more ownership. I like the upside probably a little bit more on Hollister, but Rodgers will go overlooked. So if you want to go the lower owned guy, it's Rodgers, but I do like Hollister at his price. Do you like Captain Lockett, Flex, Wilson, Sanders, Fulgham, Moore, and Hollister in GPP? I have no issue with that. Who are you going with at Captain? Well, again, I kind of told you guys I'm going a bit of a contrarian approach because it sounds like Wentz is going to go overlooked. So I'm going Rieger at captain, and I'm kind of doing a little Philly stack. Metcalf, Rieger, Seahawks D, or Lockett, Fulgham, and the Eagles D for cash. For cash games, I would rather go with the Seahawks D. So yeah, Metcalf, Rieger, and the Seahawks D. Also, do you like Goddard over Rieger or Fulgham? I love Scott today. I think Scott is one of the better, really cheap plays, right? I think it's Scott. I think it's Hollister. I think you can make the argument for Rodgers, you can make the argument for Disley, but there's definitely some viable, really cheap plays. And what do you see? Also, do you like Goddard over Rieger or Fulgham? Again, that's a tough one because all three are priced about the same. All three, I think, have upside. I would probably still slightly prefer Rieger and or Fulgham to Goddard, but I like all three a good amount. For my 3-man tournament, do you recommend Russ at captain? 3-man tournament? Yes, I would go Russ Wilson at captain. Captain Russell, Seahawks D, Lockett, Rieger, Scott, and Wentz. I think you can do it, right? There's been, obviously that lineup has some negative correlation, but we've seen multiple showdowns this year with weird lineups winning it all, right? We've seen, both defenses and a stack like the Vikings, right? So it's a contrarian approach, but again, we've seen weirder things happen. Captain Sanders, Flex, Wentz, Carson, Rieger, Hollister, and Lockett. Another pretty contrarian build, right? You're going Miles Sanders, I think goes lower owned in the captain. You're playing Wentz over Russell Wilson, which is definitely contrarian. and then you're going with Carson Lockett. So it's contrarian build. There's risk, but there's still a way that works out. And you're definitely going to have a unique lineup there with Sanders as the captain, Wentz, and no Russell Wilson. Like you're going to have, again, I think Russell Wilson close to 90% owned, 80, 90%. Great content, sir. I appreciate that. Rieger, captain, Goddard, Lockett, Metcalf, Scott, and Russ. I'm fine with that. I am. You got both the Seattle receivers with Russell Wilson, and then you got a couple pass catchers there. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. How do you feel about Captain Lockett with Russell Wilson, Fulgham, Boston Scott, and Sanders? I think that looks. I don't have an issue with that. GPP, Captain Rieger, Wilson, Sanders, Lockett, Ward, and Myers. Yeah, looks good to me. If Rieger is going to have a breakout game, this is the one. I agree. Kind of hoping for the breakout game, right? The snaps are going up for him. He's a very talented wide receiver. So how do you feel about Captain, Lockett, Wilson, Fulgham, Boston Scott, Sanders, and more? I think that is a good amount of upside. Ward or Disley? Definitely Ward for me there. I know he's a little bit more expensive, but I feel more comfortable with Greg Ward. Scott and Sanders fine for the same build with fading Wentz. Yeah, you can do it because Scott is so cheap that you don't need a lot from him, and Sanders, we expect him to get a majority of the work. We expect him to be involved in the pass game. So yes, you can play both Boston Scott and Miles Sanders. I think that's one way to kind of differentiate yourself, right? I don't think a lot of people will do that. So yeah, for value, do you like Scott or Hollister better? Oh, that's a tricky one. That's one I've been going back and forth with. I have Hollister, but it's really close. Like those are my two favorite really cheap plays. Hollister and Boston Scott. Yeah, I'm going with Hollister, but that's almost a coin flip for me. Do you like Lockett or Metcalf tonight? I like both. I prefer the price of Lockett slightly, but like I said, with these two guys, it's hard to nail down which one's going to have the big game. Both have been up and down, but both have enormous upside. Captain, Russell Wilson, Flex, DK, Lockett, Fulgham, Scott, and Rodgers. Yep, like I think that's going to be a somewhat popular build, right? Kind of going with a majority of the Seahawks, and then run it back with a couple of the cheap Philadelphia guys. Smash the like button, boys. Let's try to get to 50 likes, guys. I would really appreciate that. Are you doing a Tuesday night football video? So actually, that game got moved to Wednesday. I will have a video up for Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Kind of crazy. That game got moved to Wednesday. A couple other games in the main slate this Sunday got moved to Monday. I think one got moved to Tuesday. So yeah, there's a lot up in the air. Are you fading Wilson? I'm not. It's one way to get really different on the slate is fade Russell Wilson, but I don't have the balls to fade him on this slate. If wide receiver captain, do you generally make it a rule to include their quarterback at flex? So I only make one lineup, so I don't mess with optimizers. Would I make that a rule? I don't necessarily think you have to, right? We've seen crazy things happen on these showdown slates, so I don't think you have to include the quarterback with the wide receiver, the captain. What's the deal with Alshon? I mean, I wish I knew, right? He played, like 20% of snaps 2 games ago. They said they were going to slowly increase him, and then they went way down. So I don't know. Is he washed? Is he still hurt? 2.7K remaining. What do I do? Let's see. So you have 2.7K. It's probably going to be, yeah, I would go with either Hollister or Scott. And again, that's a really close call. I think you can still consider Richard Rodgers as well. Alshon, again, I'm not really going there with snaps way down. Nothing more than a contrarian play. Yeah, so for me, with that price remaining, I would go either Hollister or Boston Scott. Are you fading Russell? I'm not. I'm playing Russell Wilson. Okay, Alshon Jeffrey, again, barely played that last game, so hard to feel really confident with Alshon. If you have a gut feeling and you think this is a game that maybe Alshon gets extended a bit, then yeah, you can throw him in there. But based off what we see in last game, where's Philly? Only 7% of snaps. It's not a good sign when in week 10 in his first game back, he played 27%, and then that last game only 7%. So it's trending down, but we've seen crazier things. So would I be surprised about Alshon Jeffrey playing like 40% of snaps? No, but it's hard to feel really confident about that happening just off what we've seen in the last game. Thanks for the info. Good luck, all. Appreciate that, man. Captain Lockett, Russell Wilson, Carson, Scott, Rodgers, and Metcalf. I think that's perfectly fine. For real, love the content this year. Can't wait for NBA again, especially Showdowns. Helped me a lot during the playoffs. Thanks, man. I am so excited for NBA as well. We only have like a little over a week, I think, until preseason. Sanders captain with Wilson, DK, Lockett, Hollister, and Scott. I like that, right? You're playing Russell with both pass catchers. You're kind of differentiating yourself with playing both Sanders and Boston Scott. I don't think a lot of people do that, but that lineup still has upside. And I think the way like that lineup really does well is if Philly gets off to an early lead, right? And that's basically due to Miles Sanders, right? That's what you're hoping for is kind of Philly gets off to an early lead. It's a lot of Sanders, a little bit of Scott mixed in, and then Seattle has to play from behind. I played 2 lineups. One, I managed to play 100% of the salary. Another, I went a little weirder. Yeah, so for these Showdown slates, right, if you're in the Millie Maker and you're going to try to win it solo, you got to do something different, right? This is for solo. Sure, you can build the optimal lineup and split it with however many people you want if that's the approach you want to go. But if you want to win it solo, you got to play someone pretty unique in the captain, or you got to leave a good amount on the table, or build like a really weird lineup, right? We've seen some crazy things happen. So like play both defenses, or like play both running backs from Philly, or play Hyde and Carson, right? Do something really unique. Freddie Swain is not out of play at $200, but with David Moore back makes him risky. I expect 20 to 30% of the snaps, and we've seen crazier things. So I think Freddie Swain's viable. I think he won't be super popular today. Jalen Reagor, captain with Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, Lockett, Fulgham, and Hollister. Yeah, that's kind of the approach that I'm taking. Almost identical to what I have. It's a little bit of a contrarian build, I know that, but I always tell you guys I play these slates a lot riskier than I do the main slates. So possible that Philly rides the hot hand with Hurts maybe. Possibility, it is. And again, I think with the Hurts news, I think that's just going to lower the ownership on Wentz. And that's where I'm taking the stand. What I'm hoping for is Wentz plays good and plays a majority of the game, and he comes in low ownership. Are you playing both quarterbacks? I am. Again, I think that's how I'm differentiating myself. I don't think you have to. I think Wentz will go lower owned. If you think Philly continues to struggle, or if you think Hurts is going to be a big plan in this offense tonight, then just go with that build right with the Seahawks stack. Go with Russell Wilson, the captain. Play him with either Lockett or Metcalf. Play Carson, and then maybe look to the Seahawks D. Personal bias towards some players has cost me a lot of money in the Showdowns. It's hard not to have a little bit of a bias, right, with players that have won you a good amount of money. Like, I'm not going to lie, I do have bias as well in Showdowns, even main slates, right? My bias towards Kyler Murray cost me a lot of money in the main slate yesterday. So, it's hard to ignore bias, but yeah, Captain Metcalf, let's see, Captain DK, Russell Wilson, Boston Scott, Goddard, Reagor, Fulgham for GPP. I like that a lot. Goddard or Reagor, I think the upside is a little bit higher in Reagor, but it's close to those two, really close. And Goddard, Fulgham, same thing. I think the upside is slightly higher in Fulgham, but with all three of Reagor, Fulgham, and Goddard, I like. So make a tough call there. You prefer Carson or Metcalf at captain? I think the upside is higher in Metcalf. Maybe Carson is a safer play. But if you're shooting for the upside, it's Metcalf. Sanders has gotten robbed in so many TDs. I think he comes in tonight. Yeah, Sanders will be low owned. He will. Like, Sanders is not going to be popular, so if you feel really good about Miles Sanders, I have no issue with that. He's still getting involved in the passing game. Kyler's side, yeah, that was unfortunate. I'm screwed today if Metcalf doesn't go off. I hate choosing between him and Lockett. I mean, yeah, it's just a tough call. Usually one of those guys will go off, so hope you guessed right. How does this look? Captain Reagor, Flex, Metcalf, Wilson, Wentz, Myers, Hollister. I think it looks good. No issue with that at all. But yeah, we're coming in on we now just hit lock, actually. So if you guys want to stick around, we'll go over some ownership in the Millie Maker, and then we'll get out of here. I'm curious to see what it is. I'm curious to see what Carson Wentz ownership is. I expect it to be somewhat low with the Hurts news. But yeah, that's the stand I took today. I'm hoping Wentz and Philly gets it together with the pass catchers. We'll see how it goes. Let's see. Did DraftKings post? I know they moved that. The Pittsburgh-Baltimore game is now Wednesday. Let's see. They don't have it posted yet. So that game's at Wednesday at like 3:40. So, and I think the reason why it's like early afternoon is because something with like a Christmas thing. I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, that game is now on Wednesday. And then I think a couple Baltimore and Pittsburgh's game that were on Sunday upcoming got moved to Monday and Tuesday. It's crazy, yeah. But hopefully, or Draftkings probably will have that showdown slate posted soon for Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And yeah, I will have a video for that up whenever it is out. Yeah, that's what I saw. 2020, man. It's nothing surprises me anymore. But hey, we get some Wednesday Night Football. I'm not complaining. You gonna live stream for the game on Wednesday? I will. I'll be live for the game on Wednesday. How's the best ball coming along? Finished second in best ball, unless Jalen Reagor goes absolutely off. I need Reagor to have like 50 fancy points for me to win. So yeah, unfortunately, I got second in best ball. Good luck, everyone, trying to single entry take down 20 entry tourney. So had to get different. Thanks, man. Yeah, of course. Let's see. All right, we do have ownership now, so let's go over it. Let's go over my lineup. So, okay, this is kind of what I expected. The Philly guys are low owned. I want Jalen Reagor in the captain, 30% owned. Carson Wentz, 33% owned. Dallas Goedert, 31% owned. Russell Wilson, 84%. Again, it's 80-90% was my guess. Lockett, 64%. Hollister, 20%. That's my lineup. Curious to see what other ownership is here. Seahawks defense is 20% owned. I'm not overly surprised about that with Wentz struggling, throwing picks, right? DK Metcalf, 52%. So, also doesn't surprise me. I figured Lockett would be a little bit more popular due to the price. Carlos Hyde, 7%. Yeah, I don't really like that. I would rather have just played Carson. Curious to see what Chris Carson's ownership is. Carson coming in at 40%. So, all the Seahawks guys are obviously a lot more popular. We'll see how it goes. I'm hoping, obviously, for Philly to bounce back today. But, yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks, DK. Stoked about NBA as well. So excited. 1 like off 50. Come on, guys. Oh, we hit 50 likes. Thank you, guys. I really do appreciate the continued support. I think we got close to 200 concurrent viewers once again. Once 33% in the milli. Yeah, I knew he would be lower owned. That's the stand I'm taking. Hoping for a big game from Wentz and the pass catchers. Reagor, 28% and 4% captain. Nice. Yep. Silly for the milli. Rodgers in the captain. Wilson, Metcalf, Sanders, Hyde, Fulgham. Hey, that's a really contrarian build. But you know, Rodgers probably needs a couple touchdowns to pay that off. Only 31% Wentz. I'm thinking the Hurts stuff is a smokescreen. That's what I'm hoping for. We've seen coach talk. It's hard to trust coach talk, right? Aaron Jones a few games ago with Eckler last game, right? And this game with they're going to work in Hurts. We'll see if they actually do. I think he probably will get some snaps, but I like the ownership on Wentz. That's the stand-up I took, so hoping it works out. But yeah, I'm going to head out here, guys. I'm going to go watch this game, so good luck. Hope you guys all have a great Monday, and yeah, as always, I'll be back once 0-for-3 already. Well, not a great start for me. But yeah, as always, I will have a video up for Wednesday's show on Slate whenever they do post that. So thanks again, and I will see you guys all later.